The diner lights buzzed faintly above Eva Sinclair's head, casting a dull yellow haze over the cracked linoleum and greasy countertops. Her back ached from the double shift, and the smell of fried food clung stubbornly to her uniform. Outside, the Midwest night settled in with bitter cold, seeping through the door each time it creaked open. She glanced at the clock, 11:42 p.m., and wiped down the counter one last time. "Eva," her manager called from the back, "you're off." Eva nodded, stripped off her apron, and headed into the alley behind the diner where her rusted sedan sat half-sunk in slush. She climbed in, turned the key, and heard only a dry click. Battery dead. Again. She rested her forehead against the steering wheel. Rent was due in 4 days. Her electricity had been shut off that morning. Her bank account showed $47.16. Eva was 27 and invisible, forgotten by family, discarded by lovers, and ignored by the world. It hadn't always been this way. There had once been ambition, a scholarship, a plan, but life had chipped away at her bit by bit until there was nothing left but survival. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. Then something made her answer. A woman's voice, crisp and calm, spoke on the line. "Miss Sinclair, this is Helena with Crossworth Selective Matchmaking. You've been recommended for a premium match." Eva blinked. "I didn't apply for anything." "No," the voice replied smoothly, "but someone applied for you." A pause. "We represent Mr. Daniel Cross," the voice continued. 43. Widower. Business owner. Extremely private. He's requested a discreet arrangement, a domestic partnership. You meet his criteria." "Criteria?" Eva said slowly. "What exactly does that mean?" "Fidelity, discretion, obedience," Helena said, as if reciting something standard. "He requires a wife for companionship, social appearances, and household management. You would be generously compensated. 6 figures, living expenses covered, travel if you wish." Eva's breath caught. "This isn't an escort service?" she asked, half joking, half terrified. "No," Helena said, with a trace of a smile in her tone. "This is a marriage. Legal. Binding. Confidential." Eva pulled her coat tighter, watching her breath fog the air. "Why me?" A pause. "He believes you would not ask questions," Helena said softly. "That you have your own reasons to disappear. Do you?" Eva was silent for a long time. A week ago she'd gotten a letter from her mother, not to reconcile, but to say her stepfather had died, her abuser. Dead and buried, the man who'd stolen her childhood, her dignity. But even in death, he left her nothing but scars and silence. She wasn't running from nothing. She was running from everything. "Yes," Eva said finally, "I do." A few days later, she sat in a sleek black car, holding a non-disclosure agreement in one hand and a one-way plane ticket in the other. The contract spelled everything out in cold, emotionless language. 1 year of marriage. No public interviews, no contact with press, absolute confidentiality. At the bottom was Daniel Cross's signature, crisp, clean, and deliberate. She stared at it for a long time before signing her own name beneath his. There was one condition, she added, scribbled in her own handwriting before she mailed it back. "No questions about my past, ever." A week later, Eva was flown to Chicago and met by a silent driver in a Navy suit. He drove her several hours north into the forested hills near Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. The roads narrowed, the houses disappeared, and finally, the car turned down a long private drive framed by winter bare trees. At the end of the drive stood a sprawling stone mansion, beautiful, remote, and strangely hollow, as though untouched by time or warmth. A thick fog curled around its turrets like claws. Daniel was waiting at the door, tall, composed, and impeccably dressed in a charcoal wool coat. He looked more like a sculpture than a man, handsome but distant. His dark eyes studied her not like a lover or even a stranger, but like an investor assessing risk. "Eva," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "Welcome home." And just like that, she stepped inside. The doors groaned open with a weighty creak, as if unused for far too long. Eva crossed the threshold into the grand marble foyer, her boots clicking faintly against the polished stone. High above, a chandelier of dark iron and crystal loomed like a frozen storm. The air inside was cold, colder than outside, and laced with the faint scent of aged wood, old books, and something metallic beneath. Daniel closed the door behind her with a soft thud. For a moment there was only silence. "It's beautiful," Eva murmured, her breath visible in the icy air. "I like my home quiet," Daniel replied with a faint smile. "Peaceful." But it wasn't peaceful. Not really. It was empty. The grand staircase split in two like a stage set, winding up to a shadowed landing above. Faded portraits lined the walls, men and women with hollow eyes, all bearing some distant resemblance to Daniel. In the distance, a clock chimed, soft, slow, and slightly off, as though time itself hesitated in this place. Daniel gestured for her to follow. "I've given you the east wing. It has a view of the lake." As she trailed behind him, Eva glanced down hallways where shadows pooled and doors remained closed. She counted only 2 staff members, an older groundskeeper who avoided her eyes and a silent housekeeper with a stiff bun and a permanent frown. "Is that all the staff?" Eva asked, trying to sound casual. Daniel didn't look back. "Yes. I prefer a minimal presence. Privacy is important to me." They reached her room, more like a suite, with sweeping drapes, a velvet chaise, and a canopy bed that looked untouched. Everything smelled faintly of lavender and dust. Daniel set her suitcase on a bench at the foot of the bed and turned to her. "I travel often for business, but I expect the house to be kept orderly. The children's quarters." He paused. Eva tilted her head. "The children?" Daniel blinked, then smiled as if he'd misspoken. "Old habits. There were children here, once. From Elise's side, her family. The late wife. Elise." Eva tried not to stare. "What happened to them?" "They're gone," he said flatly. "Her relatives took them after she passed." But something about the way he said it made Eva's stomach twist. That night, the house pressed in around her like it was breathing. The radiator pipes groaned with age. The wind howled against the stone walls. Eva lay awake, staring at the shadows that danced across the ceiling. Then, just after 2 a.m., she heard it. Footsteps. Above her. Soft, hurried, like someone barefoot and frightened. She sat up, heart pounding. She hadn't been told anyone was living on the 3rd floor. The entire west wing and attic, Daniel said, were off limits for renovation. But those footsteps, light and quick, belonged to someone small, a child. She crept out of bed and opened her door. The hall stretched silent before her. She followed the faint sounds up the main staircase, then onto the 2nd floor, past more locked doors and faded photographs. At the end of the hall, a narrow staircase spiraled upward. It wasn't on any tour Daniel had given her. Dust lined the railing, undisturbed. At the top, she paused. The footsteps had stopped. She turned the knob and pushed. The attic smelled of cedar and something sour. Moonlight streamed through a cracked window, illuminating piles of old trunks, covered furniture, and movement. Eva froze. From behind an armoire, 2 wide eyes stared back at her. A child. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, with tangled hair and a thin, trembling frame. She was holding the hand of a boy slightly older. Behind them stood a 3rd child, tall and silent, maybe 12. His arms were crossed protectively, and his gaze held none of the fear the others had, only defiance. "Who are you?" Eva whispered. The eldest boy didn't answer, but the little girl did. "Are you gonna lock us in again?" Eva's mouth went dry. "No," she said gently. "I'm not here to hurt you." "What are you doing up here?" The boy stepped forward. "He said we had to stay hidden. That were bad luck." "Who?" Eva asked, already knowing. "Daniel," the boy replied, voice like ice. "Our father!" A door slammed below them. Eva turned sharply toward the stairs. But no one was there. Just the sound of the wind howling through the cracks, and the house whispering to itself. Eva barely slept that night. She kept playing the children's words over in her head, especially the way the eldest, Noah, had said "Our Father" like a curse. And the question the little girl, Lily, had asked, "Are you going to lock us in again?" By morning, the attic was empty. The mattresses they'd been sleeping on, thin, stained, and hidden behind furniture, were still there. So were the tattered blankets. But the children themselves were gone, as if they'd vanished into the walls. Eva searched the upstairs hallway, tapping gently on doors, but everyone was locked. When she went down to breakfast, Daniel was waiting at the long dining table, reading the paper and sipping black coffee like nothing in the world was wrong. "You're up early," he said, not looking up. Eva studied his face, calm, controlled, impossibly still. "I thought I heard something last night," she said casually, settling across from him. He turned the page. "This old place creaks. The wind's been aggressive lately. You said Elisa's family took the children after she passed." Daniel finally looked at her. His smile was thin. "Yes." Eva tilted her head. "What were their names?" "Lily, Sam, and Noah," he replied without hesitation. "I assume that's why you're asking." She forced a light laugh. "Just curious." Daniel folded the paper. "They weren't mine biologically. Elise had them before we met. I tried, but we weren't meant to be parents. Her family blamed me for her condition. After she died, they took the children. We haven't spoken since." Eva nodded, pretending to accept it. But something in his tone bothered her. Not grief, not regret, just cold precision, like he'd rehearsed the story many times. Later that day, Eva went back to the attic. She brought a tray of food, fruit, crackers, a thermos of hot tea, unsure if they'd even show up. But as she opened the door, she saw 3 pairs of eyes peeking through the dusty wardrobe. The children stepped out cautiously, still unsure of her. "I brought you something," she said gently, placing the tray down and stepping back. Lily crawled toward the food first, grabbing a cracker with both hands. Sam followed, holding her wrist like a lifeline. Noah didn't move. Eva knelt, her voice low. "How long have you been up here?" "Since Mommy left," Lily said, her mouth full. Eva's throat tightened. "Where did she go?" "She was going to take us away," Noah said flatly. But he stopped her. Sam nodded silently, clutching a threadbare stuffed bear. "Daniel?" Eva asked. Noah didn't answer. Lily tugged on Eva's sleeve. "There are monsters in the walls. Sometimes they whisper at night. Sam heard one say, 'Mommy's never coming back.'" Eva blinked. "Sweetheart, those aren't monsters. This house just makes strange noises." But Lily shook her head fiercely. "It's not the house. It's him." Eva looked at Noah. "Did your mother ever say anything to you before she left?" Noah hesitated. "She said we couldn't trust anyone, especially the people who smile too much." Eva's stomach twisted. She spent the next several days visiting the children in secret. She smuggled food, books, blankets. She cleaned their faces, combed Lily's hair, taught them songs to pass the time. In the evenings, she returned to her role as Daniel's new wife, polite, composed, obedient. But each night the mask grew harder to wear. And then she saw it. She was helping Lily take off her sweater when she noticed a yellowish bruise blooming on the girl's upper arm. Eva froze. "Who did this to you?" Lily's eyes filled with tears, and she whispered, "He said we were too loud. We were being bad." A fury Eva hadn't felt in years surged through her. Later, she confronted Daniel, but not directly. "Not yet." "You never said why you really stopped trying to get custody," she said over dinner. He glanced up from his plate. "I told you, they weren't mine. It wasn't worth the legal battle." "But you kept the house," Eva pressed, "where they lived, where your wife, died." Daniel's expression darkened. "Elise died of an overdose, Eva. A tragic accident. Not everything needs to be analyzed. Some things just are." She didn't speak again that night. But as she lay in bed, she couldn't stop hearing Lily's voice. "He said we were too loud. We were being bad." The next morning, Eva made a decision. Whatever secrets his house held, she was going to uncover them. And if Daniel had locked these children away to bury the truth, she was going to dig it up, no matter the cost. The West Wing had always been off limits. Daniel made that clear the day Eva arrived. "It's under restoration," he had said, his tone polite but firm. "Too dangerous. Mold, dust, crumbling beams, you understand." But Eva didn't believe him. Not anymore. Not after the children, the bruises, the whispers about Elise's disappearance. Not after she found herself cataloging every padlock in the house, while pretending to care about Daniel's tedious dinner conversations. The door to the West Wing was always locked. Heavy, ornate, and sealed with a brass key Daniel kept on his watch chain. But Eva had grown up around locksmiths. Her father had run a repair shop back before he died, and she had learned the basics of tumblers and pins before she ever kissed a boy. She still remembered how to pick a lock. So one morning, after Daniel left for a supposed business meeting in the city, Eva slipped a thin roll of lock-picking tools from beneath a loose floorboard in her closet, right where she had hidden them after her arrival. Just in case. She waited until the house was still, the staff nowhere to be seen, and tiptoed down the corridor to the West Wing. The brass lock clicked open after less than 2 minutes. That fact chilled her more than it should have. The door creaked inward on reluctant hinges, releasing a breath of air so cold it made her gasp. Dust danced in the sunlight filtering through the stained glass windows, casting red and green patterns across faded wallpaper. The hallway was lined with closed doors. The silence was heavier here, dense, with something unspoken. She opened the first door on the right. A sitting room, elegant, untouched, draped in white sheets. Furniture ghosted in fabric. A cracked teacup still sat on the end table, as though someone had once left in a hurry and never returned. The next door revealed a nursery, empty except for a single rocking horse tipped on its side, its eye painted like a tear. The wallpaper peeled in strips. Eva backed out quickly. Finally, she found it, the master bedroom. The door opened with an eerie groan, and the air inside was colder than anywhere else in the house. The room was preserved like a shrine. Heavy velvet curtains were drawn tight, casting everything in shadow, but Eva could still make out the outline of the massive bed, the ornate vanity, the silk nightgown still folded on the edge of a chaise lounge. The dust was thick, except on the nightstand. There, a photo sat. A woman with wide green eyes and chestnut hair, holding Lily in her lap, smiling stiffly beside a much younger Daniel, Elise. Eva stepped farther in and saw something even more jarring. Deep brown stains on the edge of the rug by the bathroom door. Old, faded, but unmistakable. Blood! She crouched, heart hammering, and pulled back the rug slightly. More stains. Long streaks. Like something had been dragged. A sick taste rose in her throat. She turned to the vanity. It was cluttered with perfume bottles, makeup containers, untouched for years. She opened each drawer one by one, hands trembling. In the third drawer, wedged beneath a false bottom, she found it. A leather-bound journal. Elise's name was scrawled inside the cover, along with the date. 6 months before her supposed death. Eva sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress sagging beneath her, and began to read. "He's watching me. Always. Even when he says he's away on business, I hear his footsteps. I smell his cologne at night when I know I locked the door. The children cry in their sleep. Noah says he sees a man in the mirrors, one who wears their father's face but isn't him. I think I'm being poisoned, or driven mad. If anyone finds this, please believe me. Daniel is not who he says he is. He wasn't my savior. He was my sentence." Eva's hands shook as she turned the pages. There were entries about bruises, about being locked in the bedroom for days, about strange visitors Elise was never allowed to meet. And then, on the final page, "Tomorrow I run. I take the kids and we leave. I have to. If we don't, I don't think I'll live to see next week. If this is my last entry, tell them I tried. Tell them I fought." Tears blurred Eva's vision as she closed the journal. For a moment, the air seemed to shift. The silence deepened, pressing against her eardrums. Like the house was listening. Suddenly, A floorboard creaked behind her. She turned, but no one was there. Still, something had changed. The room felt colder, more alert. She tucked the journal beneath her sweater and backed out of the room slowly, careful not to disturb anything else. She shut the door, locked it again, and left the West Wing with her heart pounding. The truth had just taken shape, and now it had teeth. The house felt different after Eva read Elise's journal. Every creaking floorboard felt like a warning. Every distant echo, a whisper of something watching her. Eva had read those last desperate lines by candlelight deep into the night, committing every word to memory. Daniel wasn't a grieving widower. He was a spider in the center of a web, and she was living in his trap. Still, she kept playing the part. The compliant wife, the grateful woman saved from poverty. She wore pearls. She kissed him goodnight, and all the while she plotted. It wasn't long before the housekeeper appeared. Eva was in the greenhouse, trimming the orchids Daniel insisted be maintained year-round, when she caught a movement through the glass. A woman stood just beyond the trellis, half in shadow, mid-50s, tightly wound gray bun, nervous eyes darting left and right. Eva stepped out cautiously. "Can I help you?" The woman didn't smile. "You're her, aren't you? The new one?" Eva blinked. "I'm Mrs. Cross, yes." "She didn't last long either," the woman muttered. "None of them do." Eva's breath caught. "You worked here?" The woman nodded. 2 years. I cleaned Elise's room. Before she vanished." She hesitated, then stepped closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "They said she ran off. But I know what I saw. There was blood on the floor. And Daniel didn't let anyone clean it. Said it was under control." Eva swallowed. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you need to leave," the woman said, urgent now. "You're not safe. He doesn't let anyone get too close. Not really. Once you know too much, he makes you disappear." "What do you mean, disappear?" The woman looked around again, terrified. "Do you know how many housekeepers this estate has had in the last 5 years? 5. I've spoken to the others. One went missing a week after asking about the children. Another was found dead in a motel an hour south. No investigation. Just another junkie overdose." She leaned in. "Daniel cleans his messes quietly, elegantly. That's why no one ever talks." Eva's heart pounded. "Why didn't you go to the police?" The woman laughed bitterly. "Go to the police and say what? That a rich man makes people vanish? That the children in his attic talk about monsters? They'd lock me up." She reached into her coat and handed Eva a small, crumpled envelope. "I wrote everything down. Elise's last days. What I saw. Keep it safe." Before Eva could speak, the woman turned and hurried down the path, disappearing into the fog like a ghost. Eva clutched the envelope to her chest. Inside were handwritten notes, dated and filled with precise, haunting detail. Elise begging the staff not to leave her alone with Daniel. A muffled scream from the West Wing. The scent of bleach in the dead of night. 2 days later, the woman was gone. Eva called the number listed in the notes, a landline scribbled in fading ink. A man answered. "Who is this?" "I'm looking for Helen Lang," she said. "She worked at—" "She doesn't live here anymore," the man interrupted. "Do you know where she went?" "No forwarding address." Click. Eva stared at the receiver, bile rising in her throat. That night, when Daniel came home, Eva tried to act normal, but she couldn't stop her hands from shaking as she served dinner. He noticed. "Are you feeling all right, darling?" he asked with a faint smile. "Just a headache," she lied, lowering her eyes. He reached over and touched her wrist, gently but firmly. "I hope it isn't stress. This is a peaceful house. I expect it to stay that way." Something in his voice was off. Not a warning, more like a reminder. An expectation wrapped in silk. Eva looked at him, suddenly hyper-aware of the pressure of his fingers. There were cameras in the hallways, locks on the children's doors, secrets in the walls. And somewhere in this grand estate was a grave no one had found. That night, she barely slept. When she checked the attic, the children were wide awake. Noah sat upright, holding a flashlight and a sharpened pencil like a weapon. "He came to the door," Noah whispered. He stood there, didn't knock, didn't say anything, just stood there. Eva's voice trembled. "What did you do?" "We waited for him to leave." Lily tugged at Eva's sleeve. "We don't want to disappear like Mommy." Eva pulled all three children close, her voice steady even as her pulse raced. "You won't, I promise." But deep down, she knew something had shifted. Daniel was watching her now, not just as a wife, but as a threat, and the clock was ticking. Eva never intended to fall into this deep. The plan had always been to stay long enough to gather information, to get close, get proof, and then vanish. But the children changed everything. Their wide, wary eyes, their soft sobs at night, the way they flinched when the wind slammed a door shut. She couldn't walk away from them now, even if it meant risking her own life. Especially now that Daniel was watching her. He smiled like a man in love, but his eyes tracked her too closely, like a hunter waiting for prey to trip. Eva had to move fast. She needed more than bruises and whispers. She needed hard evidence, something that couldn't be explained away or buried. So she began to dig. She started with the study, Daniel's favorite room. He kept it locked most days, but Eva had grown adept with locks. Late one night, after pretending to be asleep beside him, she slipped out and crept down the hall, tools hidden in her robe pocket. Inside the study, the air smelled of leather and old cigars. Rows of heavy books lined the walls, too neatly. She ran her fingers along the spines, tapping gently, listening for hollow spaces. It was behind a row of encyclopedias on the bottom shelf, a panel that popped out with the lightest pressure. Behind it, a narrow compartment held a metal box, its surface layered in dust. Eva pried it open. Inside were documents, old birth certificates, passports, newspaper clippings. But the names weren't all the same. Daniel Cross, Daniel Crane, Andrew Collins, D.R. Chambers. All the same man. Different cities, different dates. One passport issued in Prague, another in Toronto, one under a name that linked him to a family estate in Vermont, the Cranes. That name lit up something buried in Eva's memory. She took the oldest document to the children's tiny attic reading light and unfolded the creased page. A headline from a decades-old newspaper. Heir to Crane Holdings survives fire that killed family. Suspected arson ruled accidental. Eva scanned the article. A teenage Daniel Crane had supposedly survived the mysterious blaze that destroyed the Crane family's estate. The fire was ruled an accident, caused by faulty wiring. But rumors swirled about financial ruin, legal trouble, and a pending investigation into the family's real estate empire. The case had gone cold. The Crane fortune had vanished, and so, apparently, had Daniel Crane. Until he reinvented himself. Again. And again. Eva sat back, heart thudding. Daniel Cross didn't inherit wealth. He buried his past and rebuilt it out of ashes and lies. And Elise had married a man with a body count behind him. Later that week, Eva found the second keyhole, this one hidden behind a framed painting in the hallway. It led to a crawl space between the walls. Inside, bundled in plastic, were more documents. Court papers. A sealed folder marked with a now-defunct law firm's logo. She opened it and found pages detailing the transfer of property and funds from a woman named Margaret Crane to a D. Chambers, dated 6 months before her death in what appeared to be another mysterious accident. Elderly, no next of kin. Eva felt sick. Daniel's fortune wasn't built on inheritance, it was built on victims. She snapped pictures of everything with the burner phone she kept hidden in a hollowed-out book under her mattress. Then she sealed everything back where she found it, for now. That night, Daniel invited her to the dining room for a special dinner. The table was set with fine china, champagne chilled in a silver bucket. A violin played softly from a Bluetooth speaker. Eva wore red, the same shade Elise wore in the framed photo on the master bedroom wall. Daniel raised his glass. To us. And to fresh starts. His eyes flicked across her face, searching, testing. Eva smiled. To new beginnings. But as she lifted her glass, she saw it, a flicker of something in his gaze. Recognition. Suspicion. She sipped slowly. hiding the fear rising in her chest. Later, when he excused himself to take a call, Eva tiptoed into his private bathroom. She opened the medicine cabinet. There, behind rows of neatly labeled pill bottles, she found something she wasn't expecting. A single photo. Crumpled. Torn at the edges. A girl, young, maybe 19, standing at a gravesite. Her hand rested on the headstone, her face half turned from the camera. But Eva knew that face. It was her. From 10 years ago. She staggered back. Daniel had known who she was all along. Eva barely slept that night. She lay motionless beside Daniel, body stiff as stone, mind racing. He had a photo of her from a decade ago, before the name change, before the reinvention. That meant he knew who she really was. How long had he known? Since the beginning? Since the matchmaking agency? Or had he found out after she moved in? Worse, why hadn't he said anything? At breakfast, Daniel acted as if nothing had changed. He buttered his toast, complimented her robe, asked what she'd like to do for the day. But his smile had a sharpness to it now, as though both of them knew the game had changed and were pretending it hadn't. Eva went through the motions, but her mind was elsewhere. She had to accelerate the plan. The time for quiet investigation was over. It was time to find Elise. She started with the children. Noah, the oldest, still barely spoke above a whisper, but she caught him alone that afternoon while Sam and Lily napped. They sat in the attic beneath a dusty skylight, a blanket wrapped around their shoulders like a tent. "Noah," Eva said gently, "I need to know what happened to your mom." He looked away. "She died, that's what Dad says." "And what do you think?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he looked at her with haunted eyes. "I think she ran away. I think she tried to take us, but he caught her." "Did you see her leave?" "No. But I heard them fight the night she disappeared. She screamed and said she wasn't going to let him hurt us anymore. Then she was gone." Eva swallowed hard. "Did she ever say where she'd go?" Noah hesitated. "She used to talk to someone on the phone. Late at night. A woman. She said if anything happened to her, the woman would know what to do." Eva's heart thudded. "Do you know the woman's name?" He nodded. "Her name was Camille." Eva froze. Camille. Her stomach twisted. Camille Green had once been her roommate. Her best friend. The same Camille who'd tried to convince her not to get involved in this plan in the first place. She raced to her burner phone and called the number she'd kept in her back pocket for emergencies. "Camille," Eva said when the line picked up. "It's me. Evelyn." There was a sharp intake of breath. "Eva? Jesus, are you okay?" "Not really. I need to ask you something. Did you know Elise Cross?" Silence on the other end. "You did, didn't you?" Camille sighed. "She called me once. About a year ago. Said she was scared, that her husband was dangerous, that he wasn't who he claimed to be. She asked me to help her disappear. I tried, but the trail went cold a week later." Eva pressed the phone tighter to her ear. "Do you have anything? A message? A file?" Camille hesitated. "Actually, yes. She mailed me a flash drive before she vanished. I didn't open it. I was scared. But if you're saying what I think you're saying—" "I need it, Camille, now." Camille agreed to send the contents digitally. Within the hour, Eva had downloaded the files. Audio recordings, notes, even a video. She played the video first. The screen flickered, then showed Elise, frail, tear-streaked, speaking into the camera from what looked like the attic. "If you're seeing this, I didn't make it out," she said. "My name is Elise Crane. My husband, Daniel Cross, or Crane, or Collins, whatever name he's using, he's dangerous. He hurts people, he's hiding things. I've tried to leave, I've tried to protect the children. But he's watching me, always watching." She paused, then added, "If you're watching this, you need to protect them, please. And if you can, tell Evelyn I tried. I really did." Eva dropped the tablet, her hands shook. Elise had known her name. Her real name. That meant Daniel had told her. Or Elise had figured it out on her own. Eva stood frozen for a long moment before realization sank in like ice water down her spine. The game hadn't just changed. It had always been something else entirely. Everyone had been playing under false assumptions. She hadn't been the only one who entered the marriage with secrets. And maybe Just maybe, Elise wasn't dead at all. The flash drive still sat on Eva's lap as the screen faded to black. Elise's voice lingered in the room like a ghost. "Tell Evelyn I tried." Not Eva. Evelyn. The name she'd buried. For the first time since she stepped foot on the Cross estate, Eva felt truly exposed. Her cover hadn't been as perfect as she believed. Somewhere in the cracks of her carefully constructed story, her real self had leaked through, and Elise had seen it. Elise, whose face the world believed was buried in a coffin. Elise, who might still be alive. Eva clutched the locket at her neck. A locket that didn't hold a picture of Daniel or her new life, but of her older brother, Jacob Black. Jacob, who had once been Daniel Crane's business partner. Jacob, who vanished 10 years ago after accusing Daniel of fraud. Jacob, who everyone said took his own life, except Eva never believed it. Eva Evelyn had promised herself that if no one else would look into her brother's disappearance, she would. And when Daniel resurfaced under a new name, flashing wealth and charm, with a wife and children and no consequences, she knew she had found her opening. She joined the matchmaking agency not by chance, but by design. She studied his patterns, forged a believable past, erased her real identity piece by piece, until Evelyn Black no longer existed. Only Eva Sinclair remained, a desperate, agreeable woman with no questions asked, the perfect bride. But now the game had turned on her. Daniel knew who she was. Elise knew who she was. And there were still too many unanswered questions. Why had Elise left that message for her? Why didn't she run to the police? Why had Daniel kept the photo of Evelyn and not used it against her? And most haunting of all, why did it feel like Daniel was waiting for her all along? Eva went to the attic. The children were playing quietly, Lily brushing Sam's hair, Noah reading from an old mystery book. They looked up when she entered, and something in her chest cracked. She had come to this house to take down a monster, but now she had something to lose. "I need to tell you something," she said softly. "My name isn't really Eva." Noah frowned. "What do you mean?" "My real name is Evelyn. Evelyn Black. I came here because someone very close to me disappeared after working with your dad. I think he was trying to do the right thing, and he paid the price." "You mean like our mom?" Lily whispered. Eva nodded. "Maybe exactly like your mom." She knelt down and took Lily's hand. "But I didn't know about you. I didn't expect to care. But I do, so much, and now I need your help. I think your mom might still be alive. And I think we can find her, if we're careful." Sam looked scared. "Is Daddy going to be mad?" Eva pulled him into her arms. "He can't hurt you anymore. Not if we stick together." That night, Eva went into Daniel's private study again. She was done playing passive. This time, she wasn't looking for secrets. She was setting a trap. She left a note in Daniel's desk drawer, unsigned. "I know who you really are. I know what happened to Jake." She planted it not as a warning, but as bait. And sure enough, an hour after midnight, she heard Daniel leave the bedroom. His footsteps were slow, cautious. She followed silently, barefoot down the hallway. From the shadows, she watched as he entered the study and read the note. He didn't shout. He didn't panic. He simply smiled. A slow, twisted grin stretched across his face. Then he whispered to himself, "So she finally remembers." Eva's heart stopped. Remembers? Remembers what? The morning after Daniel smiled at the mysterious note, the entire house shifted. Not physically, but in atmosphere. Eva could feel it in the walls. The shadows seemed heavier, the silence more deliberate. Even the staff, what was left of them, avoided eye contact. The cook, who used to quietly hand Eva tea, now trembled as she served breakfast, eyes darting toward Daniel like a trapped animal waiting for a blow. Daniel, of course, was the picture of ease. He sipped his coffee, commented on the weather, flipped through the financial section of a newspaper he didn't read. But Eva knew. He had read the note. He knew. And he wanted her to know that he knew. She spent the next 24 hours in action. No more slow burn plotting. No more waiting for the perfect moment. If she hesitated now, she'd lose the children. She might lose her life. Elise had tried to escape once and disappeared. Eva would not make the same mistake. Her first move was getting Camille's help again. That afternoon she called from a burner phone in the greenhouse, away from surveillance. "Camille," she whispered, crouching behind the ferns, "I need you to book us a car, no paper trail, for 5 people, tonight." There was a pause. "5?" Camille asked. "Me and the kids." "And Daniel?" Eva's voice turned cold. "He's not coming." By dusk, the plan was in motion. She packed a bag for each child. Just the essentials: warm clothes, snacks, a few keepsakes. She added the flash drive, Elise's journals, and the hidden documents she'd stolen from Daniel's study. Evidence. Enough to destroy him if it ever reached the public. Then she waited, but Daniel beat her to the move. At exactly 9:17 p.m., she heard it. Car tires crunching gravel in the driveway. Not Camille's car, something bigger. When she looked out the window, her blood turned cold. Daniel was loading the children into his SUV. They weren't struggling. They looked groggy. Drugged. Eva sprinted. She burst through the front door barefoot, the wind slicing through her nightgown. "Daniel!" He turned, already strapping Lily into the back seat. His expression didn't change. "We're going for a drive," he said smoothly. "Fresh air. I thought you'd appreciate some time to reflect." "You drugged them." He smiled. "I gave them something to help them sleep. They were too anxious around you lately. I thought they deserved some peace." "You're not taking them." He shrugged. "And who's going to stop me, Evelyn?" Eva froze. He'd said it, out loud. Her real name. "I know why you're here," Daniel continued. "Jacob Black. You think I killed him. You think I killed Elise. You think I'm some monster in a mansion luring women into graves." "Aren't you?" she snapped. "I didn't kill your brother," he said evenly. "He killed himself. After he realized the empire we built together couldn't be sustained. He couldn't handle the shame." Eva's voice broke. "Liar." "And Elise?" His smile faded. "She tried to take my children. I stopped her. But no, Evelyn, I didn't kill her either." "Then where is she?" Daniel opened the driver's door and paused. "Find her," he said softly. "Then you'll see who the real villain is." And with that, he started the engine. But he didn't get far. The wheels locked. Eva had slashed the tires 2 hours earlier. Daniel stepped out, fury breaking through his calm exterior for the first time. You! She threw the match. It landed at his feet. The oil she'd poured across the porch caught instantly. Flames leapt up the wooden frame of the house like hungry claws. The wind turned orange. "You don't get to leave," Eva said, eyes blazing. "Not this time." Daniel rushed forward, but the fire surged faster than even he anticipated. He coughed, stumbled backward. The porch collapsed behind him, separating them by a wall of flame. The children, still drowsy but safe, were carried away by Camille, who had pulled up in an unmarked sedan, watching it all from a distance. Eva didn't look back, not even as the mansion cracked, split, and finally collapsed in a symphony of fire and wood. But as the last embers died and dawn approached, a question gnawed at her. Did Daniel really die in the fire? There was no body, only a scorched watch, a footprint in ash. And something worse. A final envelope waiting for her in the mailbox. No name on the front, just one line inside. "You didn't win. Not yet." 2 weeks after the fire, Eva Sinclair, no, Evelyn Black, was living in borrowed quiet. A cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains, tucked far from cameras, neighbors, or questions. Camille had arranged everything, right down to the fake IDs. The children were enrolled in an online school under new names. Noah had started to smile again. Lily played with dolls instead of flinching at shadows. Sam slept through the night. And Eva? She hadn't stopped looking over her shoulder. She told herself Daniel was dead. She'd seen the flames, the collapse, the scorched SUV with its melted seats and cracked windows. There was no way out. No one could survive that. But still, no body, no official declaration, no dental records, no DNA. And then the letter arrived. A knock at the door one rainy afternoon. Camille peeked out and motioned Eva forward. A man in a charcoal suit stood on the porch, weathered briefcase, rain on his collar. He looked like a ghost from another life. "Evelyn Black?" he asked, even though Camille had used a fake name to rent the property. Eva's heart thudded. "Who's asking?" "I'm Martin Greaves, legal representative of the late Daniel Cross." Her knees buckled slightly at the sound of the name. "He's confirmed dead? Declared missing, presumed dead. That's enough for probate proceedings to begin." He opened the case. "I have his final will. He named you the sole beneficiary." Eva blinked. "What?" "Mr. Cross revised his will 3 days before the fire. Everything, his assets, properties, businesses, is to be transferred to you, including full guardianship of his children." Camille, standing behind her, whispered, "Why would he do that?" Eva stared at the documents, mind racing. "This is a trap." "There's one more thing," Greaves said, pulling out a smaller envelope. "This was sealed and marked to be delivered upon his death." Eva took it with trembling hands. The paper was thick, expensive, her name scrawled across the front in a handwriting she knew too well. Inside was a single note. "You think you won, but this story isn't over. Look deeper. The fire wasn't the end. It was the beginning. D." Beneath it, a postscript. "Check the vault beneath the east wing. The combination is your brother's birthday." Eva's stomach dropped. That wing had burned to the ground. But beneath it? She remembered a trapdoor Daniel once warned her away from. A storm cellar. She had never gotten inside. Until now. 2 days later, Eva stood on the smoldered remains of the Cross estate. The air still stank of ash and wet soot. Camille had driven her while the children stayed in a safe house. The trapdoor was warped but visible beneath the rubble. She pried it open with a crowbar and descended into the darkness with a flashlight. The vault was there, and it opened with Jacob Black's birthday. Inside, she found more than she expected. Photos, tapes, journals, a meticulous archive of every woman Daniel had ever lured, every identity he'd ever assumed, victims, witnesses. A ledger of names, some crossed out in red ink, others circled. Elise's name appeared again and again. And then, in the back, a file labeled simply, Project Phoenix. Eva opened it. Inside were blueprints, offshore accounts, passports, new IDs. It was Daniel's next life. A fully laid plan for escape and rebirth. He had done this before. And he'd do it again. At the bottom of the file, a plane ticket. One way. Departed 2 days before the fire. Eva dropped the file. He wasn't in the house. Back at the cabin, Eva stood at the window as dusk fell. Camille read to the children behind her. Laughter echoed through the small space. But Eva felt no peace. Somewhere out there, Daniel Cross, Crane, whatever name he would next wear, was alive. Watching, waiting. But this time, she was ready. She had his journals, his secrets, his fortune, and most of all, she had his children, the one thing he could never truly control. As lightning split the sky, Eva whispered to herself, "You want a second round, Daniel? Come find me. But next time, I won't just burn your house down. I'll bury your legacy."